This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Welcome to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Today is Tuesday, November the 11th, Veterans Day 2025. I want to thank all the veterans out there for their service throughout their lives. We're going to take a quick look at our markets here coming up very shortly, but right now, Secretary Mike Naig gives us the latest information from the HPAI outlook. Talking about the time of the year, obviously harvest wrapping up, but obviously birds migrating around, and we've had our first case. You know, we were just knocking on wood last month that hopefully we were going to be all right, but we did get our first cases of HPAI, and talk a little bit about where we're at with that situation.
Yeah, we did, and it was an odd situation because we had a case right there at the beginning of October, and typically this is the fourth year that we're seeing high path activity. The last 3 years, we had our first case right around October 20th or somewhere in there, and here we had this early case, which really had us. We were concerned. I don't mind telling you that might be an indicator of what kind of year we were going to have, because of course we're watching to our north. South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, continuing to deal in the last even just few days with some additional cases. And what that just tells us is that, and we're picking it up in wild bird detections as well. So we know that the wild migratory birds, yes, in fact, do have high path, that it is a strain that is once again very infective and has a dramatic impact. And so what we know is that wave of birds as they come south, that depending on when the weather turns, and it's gotten blustery and a little cooler and those types of things. So I think, unfortunately, we're expecting to have additional cases. All indications are is that we will as those birds move through. And of course, you start to see geese flying this time of year, and that we're just getting into that season. So unfortunately, to our friends to the north, they're dealing with these cases. We are still just sitting at that one, knock on wood. But every expectation is that we will see an increase in that, though our producers are absolutely doing everything they can from a biosecurity standpoint to try to prevent that from happening. And we just know we have to be on high alert right now.
And we talked last month, we've seen such an uptick in awareness and checking for it and recognizing the signs earlier that we've been able to minimize it. Knock on wood, there's no variation to it that gets out of hand on this. But, as of where we were standing, we've been able to stay on top of it compared to the first go round.
And that has to be true, right? That's where our team, and certainly we are lead in terms of responsibility here in the state of Iowa, working alongside our partners at USDA and with the industry. And of course, what we learned in the past is the quicker that you can detect and the faster that you can manage that site, the more that you can, the more you can reduce the likelihood that you're going to spread that virus from farm to farm. And we have essentially have ended that lateral movement. And it really is these wild bird introductions. So it is important that we stay ahead of it. And of course, we also think about it's the right thing from preventing spread for our producers and their livelihoods. But of course, we're also thinking about ultimately the consumer. And we don't want to see shortages of anything. And we have seen that happen throughout the last couple of years at times. And so that's the whole point of trying to act swiftly, is that you prevent spread, you prevent that impact or minimize that impact on consumers ultimately.
Well, that again was Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig, and it's time to get now into the closing markets. We're being joined by Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. We're on a Tuesday here. Kenan, what did we see come out of those markets today?
Yeah, so corn had a pretty good day, up a couple cents. It's been in a very tight trading range here, and watching if it can pop over the 200-day moving average here with some news or some trade pushing it over. WASDE report is coming out Friday, so maybe that will be the news needed to push it over. But yeah, been a big consolidation pattern here. That December contract's been trading, high 420s to 435, not quite able to push through that 200-day. Beans pretty quiet day. Some of the front months close slightly lower. back months into next year's crops, slightly higher, but pretty quiet day in the soybeans after what happened. Down more earlier today and pretty flat for the back half of this trading day. Wheat was mixed. The Minneapolis wheat complex was up while the other two were flat to lower. So a pretty quiet day ahead of the WASDE on Friday on Veterans Day, which some people probably take off as a holiday.
I know we mentioned WASDE. Obviously, when we looked at the WASDEs in the past, we've kind of always asked what kind of idea you may have of what it might look like. But usually we've got other reports throughout the month to kind of get an idea of where things are headed and what you probably could see. I mean, how much is this just kind of nail biting when we've been waiting 2 months for a WASDE report and a month and a half since we saw any kind of reports from the USDA?
Yeah, normally you have the previous WASDE to go on, but we didn't have the previous WASDE, as you said, Dustin. So a lot of speculation in the numbers, and the USDA has numbers that general public like you and I don't have, like exports, export, some of those numbers that are on the book, flash sales, that they may have data that we aren't privy to yet. There's been no crop condition ratings for the last few weeks. So kind of just take the last numbers we had and make projections based off of those, which leads to a lot of wiggle room in the numbers. And you can kind of see that in some of the trade guesses for this WASDE report. Pretty big ranges. Overall, some of the things there is most the analyst guesses are looking for a lower corn number than that 186 and some change. And soybeans, wide range. USDA's previous number is in there for the yield. So it'll be probably a surprise one way or the other, and then it'll probably be a surprise how the market trades it. So, some of those corn WASDE reports we had earlier, like in August, huge acres increase, big yield increase, we closed higher on the corn. So there's a difference between what the WASDE says, it seems, here as of late, once we know more about the crop and how the market trades it. So it will be a very interesting day to see what numbers the WASDE puts out and how the market trades those numbers. So guesses could be huge range, huge variability.
All right, moving over to the livestock side of things. Obviously, cattle and hogs both had a banner day yesterday. Were they able to hold on to that momentum today at all, or what did we see?
Not a lot of momentum one way or the other today. Pretty flat trade. The feeder cattle had like a $4 plus range, closing slightly lower depending on the contract to slightly higher. Not really a huge change in that after limit up day yesterday. Live cattle, were down slightly, and the hogs held on to some very minor gains after a good day yesterday, maybe setting a near-term bottom. So market will hope that those bottoms that were set, last Friday are at least some near-term support, and we can build on some of the buying that we saw Monday. Today was pretty quiet. It is Veterans Day. Quiet from start to close, I should say. The feeder cattle market always has some, intraday ups and downs, which are pretty crazy. So.
All right. Well, Kenan, if folks want to look at some of the intel you guys are following, some of the information you guys have, or even see more analysis of WASDE once it comes out Friday, what's the best way for them to find that information and get in touch?
Yeah, eggmarket.net. You can see what type of services we offer and type of market information and sign up for a free trial.
All right. Kenan Layden of agmarket.net's been with us here today. Kenan, thank you so much for the insight. We'll talk again real soon.
Thank you, Dustin.
Let's look at the closing numbers on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network market screen. At the close, December corn was up 2 1/4 at $4.32 even. Soybeans for January down 2 3/4 at $11.27 1/4. Soy meal down $3.10 at $3.1690. Soy oil 52 cents higher at $51.10. Chicago wheat up 1/4 cent at $5.36 even. Kansas winter wheat down 3 1/4 at $5.23 3/4. Spring wheat out of Kansas up 3/4 at $5.24. Minneapolis spring wheat up 5 1/4 at $5.69 even. Oats trading at 7 cents higher at $3.05. On the Merc, $1.35 lower on live cattle at $227.20. Feeders were up $2.02 at $337.67. December lean hogs down 42 cents at $82.35. Pork cutouts unchanged at $95 even, and Class 3 milk 6 cents lower at $17.19. And that's been our closing market recap, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com, as well as follow us on Facebook, X, and our YouTube channel. Don't forget about the podcast information. You can find all of that online at iowaagnet.com. From the iAron Studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Mark Magnuson and Riley Smith, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.